The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Canadians aren't known on the world stage for blowing their own horns, except when they really blow their horns, as the one and only Canadian Brass has now done for more than 50 years. Some of the brass are with us tonight on 5 decades of making a big sound. Then, Nam Kiwanuka finds out why musician and vocal coach Emm Gryner equates singing with healing. And we revisit Nam's conversation from earlier this season with hip-hop artist Haviah Mighty about making new music in the depths of the pandemic. It's Tuesday, December 21st, and that's all ahead on the agenda. It's hard to imagine that it's been more than half a century since 5 musicians playing on brass instruments created this country's best ever brass musical group. But it's true, the Canadian Brass actually got together 51 years ago. But given that COVID essentially wiped out their 50th anniversary celebration, they're doing it this year. They have graced our studio before, but given current COVID restrictions, we can't do it this time. But we are delighted to have 40% of the group with us tonight. And with that, we welcome from Lansing, Michigan, one of the original Canadian Brass members. There's tuba player Charles Dellenbach on the left and French hornist Jeff Nelson, who's been with the group for the past 13 years on the right. And gents, it's great to see you again. Charles, I got to start with you. Actually, I'm not going to call you Charles. I've known you 50 years. I'm calling you Chuck, which is what I always call you. Chuck, would you ever have imagined when you set this thing up 51 years ago that you'd still be doing this now?
Well, Mr. Paikin, what I found over the, you climb a small hill. It's such a cliche, but you climb a small hill and you see a bigger one in front of you and you climb that. And but I think we were the only musicians on the earth that thought we could find our way to Carnegie Hall by playing children's shows in the Hammer in Hamilton.
That's where it all started, isn't it? Hamilton, Ontario. Pretty cool. Yep. I want to bring up a picture of what the group looks like now, and I'll ask our director, Sheldon Osmond. There it is. Now, there you are, surrounded by 4 colleagues who, how do I put this delicately, are all about half your age. And I guess I want to know what the secret is to successfully regenerating the group as you go through the decades.
Well, I think the key is hiring your sons. Those are all my sons, the 4 boys. No, we decided early on not to simply replace ourselves with friends and old buddies, but to really look for the finest players, in the world. And consequently, it is a sustaining opportunity. The Canadian Brass hopefully could play for another 50 years. And I think that was our dream.
Jeff, what's the process a newbie has to go through in order to be brought into the group?
Well, thanks, Dad, for that answer. And it's a wild ride. I'm sure, you just go from 20 kilometers an hour to 8,000 instantly. So it's a big baptism of fire, but it's such a dream to be able to play with the group that you grow up revering. Shocking as a Canadian to be in the Canadian Brass, but you go with it, and a lot of small mountains and cliffs and oceans, and go one day at a time.
I want to know more about how it works, though. Did you obviously had to play an audition at some point, and then is it basically like a thumbs up or a thumbs down? You make it or you don't?
Yes, it was. Yeah. And actually, I do a lot of teaching as well. So I like sharing that I didn't originally get the position 2 years prior. I auditioned and they went with someone else, and then things changed. And then I got the incredible call from Chuck saying, we have a really fast moving train here, wondering if you'd like to hop on. And I was about to play principal horn with the Vancouver Symphony, and I called and got my stuff sent to Toronto where I was. And from there, and then I think a week later, I was standing in front of Canadian Brass in Dallas, then a concert with the Spokane Symphony, and then 3 weeks of one-nighters all around Germany.
Wow.
So it happened quickly.
And you're a Manitoban originally, is that right?
Edmonton, Manitoba, yes.
Oh, you're Edmonton originally.
Yeah, a
Okay.
farm just north of Edmonton.
Okay, well, that's not too far away as the crow flies from Manitoba, because the reason I ask is I'm trying to do a good segue, which I just blew, to the little piece of tape that I want to show right now, which is that I always thought that the Nutcracker had a very popular song in it called The Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, but apparently I was wrong. It's actually called The Dance of the Manitobans. I didn't realize Tchaikovsky wrote that, but apparently you guys are all over that. So Sheldon, shall we hear a bit of that? How's that for a segue? Roll it, please. Beautiful, beautiful. Chuck, when did you guys put that together?
Well, in fact, this is one of the discoveries from the COVID era is we started recording ourselves and blending it together. And that's exactly what you saw. I think a lot of musicians had to face this same situation. And I like to tell people that I had the honor and luck of recording with RCA, Red Seal, Philips, Sony. And suddenly I'm in a small room twisting dials myself. It was quite a change. But as you can see, it's workable. And that was how we put it together.
But just so I understand the engineering of that, you didn't actually all play together in real time. Is that right? You did your parts separately and then somebody put it together?
Exactly. We all had to become experts in Logic. And for me, I had my son, who's very well versed in electronics, set it up for me. He set all the dials on the proper numbers, and then I took a picture of it so I could replicate it, and off we went. And each one of us had to figure that out.
Now, as we suggested in the intro, you guys had big plans for your 50th anniversary year, which obviously had to change because of COVID-19.
No, on the contrary. On
Really?
the contrary. Oh, absolutely. Our plan was, and this took, we were working on this for years. We had to get the whole world, the entire world, to come together to give us a year off as a benefit of the year. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. So
I see. So you actually didn't have any concerts that you had to cancel or any of that kind of stuff because you were planning to take the whole year off.
Absolutely.
Got it.
It was a beautiful thing.
I knew I was in trouble at the beginning of this, and clearly that is coming to fruition. Well, okay, Jeff, I want to give our viewers and listeners a sense, Jeff, of how it actually works for you guys, because your main gig is to teach horn at Indiana University. Go Hoosiers. But you're also in the Canadian Brass. You play in Broadway shows. You've toured with singers. You play on movie soundtracks. You've played with orchestras all over the world. How does your life work exactly?
Finger quote work. It's a lot of scheduling. I'm learning a lot about keeping lots of lists. I set a lot of alarms. And then I usually am on my horn after my two sons are asleep. So that goes up till midnight. Over the years, I guess, as it's continued, I think I get to say no to better and better things.
Is that the offers just come and you get to be a little pickier at this stage of the game? Is that it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I can handle the hardships of saying no to the Chicago Symphony because you're busy on tour or what. It's a dream. I don't pinch myself. I grew up on a pig farm 10 miles north of Edmonton. I share it a lot that it's how much do you want it, and you go for it and pick your priorities and balance it well. Came a time where I had to choose. There could have been a few things that I could do, but if I spent, those hours of the day on 5 things, they'd get this good. But if I chose one thing, then it could get this good. That's, I think, how I first did horn. I was just performing horn until I got the Indiana University gig 15 years ago. So at first I had to leave the brass to have kids and do family things. And then I realized the horn player that replaced me was going to leave the group. and Chuck asked me if I could play a few gigs with the group, and then we looked at the schedule, and there's no school during the Christmas month, so I can do the Christmas tour, and then I end up coming back full time, and boom, it happened, trying to figure it all out.
There you go. Chuck, you are, or I guess we've got you in the middle of a U.S. tour right now, which not only has taken you around that country, but I gather you're going to Germany next month as well for some concerts. And I've got to ask, like, why, again, don't take this the wrong way, but why does a guy of your experience, let's put it that way, want to keep touring as much as you do? I know it's a slog.
It's actually... It couldn't be luckier. I mean, basically, a musician, an actor, a host of a very famous show in Canada. Why do we all do this? Because we love it. And it's just an honor to be able to do it. And the fact that audiences stick with us. What I love is after a concert, meeting people that say, oh, I heard you when I was in grade school. I heard you when I was in college, and now I'm bringing my kids or even maybe my grandkids. And you realize that there is something really special and has an element of continuity. So you just I guess you do things as long as you are enjoying it, as long as it's fun. I think once the pleasure and fun were to run out, if that were to ever happen, then it would be too hard. There's too much travel. There's too much of the in-between. But when you're standing on stage in front of 2,000 people and they're cheering, and even if it's for the trumpet, I don't care. I take it anyway. It's just fantastic. It's just fantastic.
Well, let me break the news to you. They're cheering for you too, my friend, as we shall see in the Tuba Tiger Rag in Budapest. Sheldon, roll it, please. Man, look at that, look at that. Now, I realize you're wearing a nice, comfortable pair of shoes there, so that must make it easier, but that looks really hard to play, even if you were in your 20s or 30s, which you're not anymore. How do you still do that, I guess, is the question.
Well, it's not hard to do, but it needs to be taught. I actually have a PhD from the Eastman School, and the last 4 years of my studies was you have to know 2 languages, German, French, and how to make the tuba roar. So that was my concentration. No, I got a little story for you. We did a camp just north of Toronto. It's a summer camp in August. They bring up the school kids to get a head start on the fall. And I was asked to do a workshop. And it was beautiful. We had a pier out into the water. So I assembled all of the tuba players, and I taught them how to do that tuba roar, which is the tuba has to go from the left to the right. You don't want to go from the right to the left. It's got to go left to the right. And I was teaching that on the pier, and the head of the camp ran down and told me that, no, this is a serious camp, and you're not to do that.
So much for that, eh?
Yeah, that was the end of the tuba roar.
Are you really? I have heard this before, and I want to, I want to do my due diligence here and confirm it. Are you really the most recorded tuba player in the history of the world?
Well, what kind of era are we in news these days? Do you have to tell the truth, or could I?
There's no fake news on this show.
Oh, in that case, I think I'm the most recorded tuba player, definitely in an ensemble or solo situation. There might be some orchestra musician somewhere that plays for Naxos, where they make too many recordings. But as far as we know, I am the most recorded tuba player in the history of sound.
And 7,000 performances to boot.
Right.
That's pretty amazing. Now, one of the things I also found out, you guys did the Johnny Carson show. When did that happen, and how was that experience?
It was amazing. We got to stand. If you can remember the very colorful curtain they had Johnny Carson, they'd pull the curtain up and there's Johnny Carson. Well, because I'm in the middle of the group, I was standing on the inlaid brass star on the floor where Johnny stands behind the curtain. And it was an amazing moment. The curtain goes up and there you are in live TV. And at that time he was attracting, big numbers. I don't know if it's in the 20 million range, but it was a fascinating opportunity. And we got to meet Doc Severinsen at that time, which resulted, by the way, in something maybe even more fun for your general listening audience, is because we met Doc Severinsen, roll the clock forward, 1991, I believe, there was a all-star baseball game out in Los Angeles area, and they asked Doc to do the Star Spangled Banner in "O Canada," and he said, "I ain't doing "O Canada" without the Canadian brass." So there we were on the podium with Doc Severinsen playing the national anthems. So you just don't know where things lead, It's just, and I think that's even one of your very first questions. You just never know what's going to come together in something more fascinating. And that's one of the big draws of touring and going out and meeting people, is just finding out all the myriad, I guess, a plethora of opportunities that are out there for these kind of things to come together.
But here's the smart aleck follow-up question. Is Doc Severinsen a good enough trumpet player to play in the Canadian brass?
He is one of the most amazing trumpet players ever. And by the way, he's probably the loudest trumpet player that's ever existed. And here he is, he's in his early 90s.
Yeah.
And he's playing like he did when he was on the Carson show. I mean, he's just an amazing performer and amazing player.
Great. Jeff, part of my job is to look for trouble. So here comes that question. What happens when you guys don't get along? There must be artistic differences or disagreements about what you play or what you don't play or how you play it. How do you resolve all that?
Sometimes with coffee, sometimes with ice cream. We have one rule in the group that I came into really quick, is that if you can't get one other person to go with your idea, you have to let go of the idea. And that's just kind of a sanity rule. You're going to drive yourself crazy if your ideas are just unique for unique sake, or whatever it is that won't work with a group of five, But yeah, I love the idea. Chuck explains kind of our repertoire choices and how those work. And it's the two concentric circles. One is of music that an audience likes, and then the other one is the music that we love. And then the overlap is where we live. And it's just, that's the dream. I played in orchestras for years and years and never got to pick what rep we were playing. And so that's one of the dream things with chamber music. We can pick the music, and so there's lots of discussions there of what we're playing. So it has to be at least agreed by one other person.
Chuck, how often do you have to pull out I'm the original member of this group card, and I'm going to break the tie the way I want to break the tie?
I think that comes up now and then, but it's something I've really tried to avoid. My challenge was to still feel like a colleague and not a boss. Because in music, you don't want people to defer to you just because you have the authority, because you could be way off, or I could be learning new things. And especially with these younger players, every day I'm finding interesting things that I hadn't thought about myself. So I think one of the reasons a lot of ensembles do break up is people don't take that attitude. They say, look, I've got the experience, you're going to listen to me. And I've tried to do it the opposite, which is I'm here to figure out, what can we do differently, and how can we, especially in this era when people are predicting maybe even the end of classical music, which I've read in a couple places, it really is important to stay current and maybe ahead of current to figure out what's next.
Well, to that end, one of the things that you've just... Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I just wholeheartedly agree. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 bags full. Yes, Chuck.
Okay.
Yes.
You're on the concert then. You're okay, Jeff. You're on the concert tonight. That's good. That's good.
Whatever you say.
And they wonder why they call you guys the Marx Brothers of brass players. Okay, I get it. I get it. I guess to that end of trying to stay current and trying to do new things, I think you guys have put out about 70 albums over the course of the 50 years that you've been playing.
Exactly. 130. That's right.
130?
Yes.
No kidding.
Somewhere.
Holy smokes. That's a lot. But you've got a new one out now called Canadiana, which, and what a beautiful cover that is. I don't know if those are supposed to be the Northern Lights, but that's what I thought of when I saw it.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
good. I got one thing right today. That's great. I presume it is always increasingly challenging to find new things to say musically, especially after 130 albums. So, Chuck, what are you trying to say with this one that you haven't said before?
Well, there were several things involved in this. One was we have formed a strong relationship with a Canadian company with Jeff Kulovic and the Linus label. And Linus is the holder now of the incredible catalog of the Gordon Lightfoot and all those great songs. And we came up with an idea between us of covers, in a sense, covers of famous Canadian songs or songwriters that accompanied our 50 years. So the album that we created goes from Joni Mitchell right up to Drake and Deadmau5. And the idea was to give it a different twist, a different turn, but what we feel is a valid recasting of these wonderful songs that we grew up with, in a sense.
Jeff, what do you like about it?
That it's completely made up of Canadian music. So very proud and excited to play those things with beautifully, richly arranged versions, all done by Brandon Reidenauer, one of our trumpet players. And one of my favorite things is Both Sides Now, Joni Mitchell. She has an album that came out in 2000. She redid a lot of her songs with the London Symphony, and it's my favorite album. And one day I went and bought it and gave it to my mother. And I said, this is my favorite album, check it out. And she says, oh, wow, I sang that when I was pregnant with you. And so there's all these Both Sides Now things going, on both sides. Anyway, it's beautiful music and all Canadian music.
Well, I think it probably makes sense to let the music have the last word today. So let's do one more clip here. Here's The Flight of the Bumblebee, which is classic. Sheldon, go.
Sweet. Sweet.
That is so good and so creative and so hard to play, and I don't know how you guys do it, but I sure hope you keep going for another 50 years because you guys are just the best, and you are such fantastic ambassadors for this country around the world. And can I just say how much fun it's been to have 40% of the Canadian brass on our program tonight. Chuck Dellenbach and Jeff Nelson, enjoy the tour, guys. Safe travels, and see you again down the road, I hope.
Great.
Thanks, Steve.
There's no doubt that this year, this holiday season especially, many of us could use something uplifting and even therapeutic. Musician and vocal coach Emm Gryner's new book answers the call. The Healing Power of Singing, Raise Your Voice, Change Your Life is the title. And it brings Emm Gryner back to our airwaves tonight from St. Mary's in southwestern Ontario. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. It's so nice to speak to you. So I'm one of those people that think that I am a good singer when I am in the shower, and depending on who's listening, it's not so much. But I thought it was so interesting. And the way you described yourself, you describe yourself this way from the book: a kid from the middle of nowhere whose voice sounded like it was trapped inside an elephant's anus, went on to become a great singer with pretty good experiences. So was part of the reason to write this book was a way to demystify what great singing is?
I think so. And, I make that joke, but I really feel that I've come a long way. And if someone with a kind of a rough voice, untrained, didn't know what she was doing, can go on to sing with people like Bowie, can get a record deal, can have a long career in music, I just really want people to know that it means that it's possible that anyone can do it.
You also write that, when it comes to singing, it's still one of those careers where people might not take it as seriously. They kind of put it in that hobby bracket. But you want people to find power in their voice, correct?
Yes, and it's a great point that you raise, because I think part of my storytelling in this book revolves around, when you become an artist or you become a singer or you decide to make that your career, you're automatically met with this disbelief that you can make a living at it. And to this day, I still get that, that feeling of mystification from people, like, oh, you actually make a career at this, And I think that can really affect our choices. Like, we can become that starving, struggling artist if we feel like that's what's expected of us, and we start to just think that's our destiny. And I think the voice, I didn't realize this until I started to dive into writing the book, is such a mirror to how we are doing in life. There was a stretch where I really didn't honor my voice. I would go on stage, kind of like, have the scotch on the piano and just like, I can do this in my sleep. But I started to really key into being grateful for my gift. And if anyone should be grateful for their gift, it's me, who came from, the shores of Lake Huron. I joke that I was raised by wolves, and that's not really true, but there was nothing to do where I grew up, and all I wanted to do was have a voice and sing. So sometimes we forget our dreams along the way, and that's what the book is about, is rediscovering those long-standing dreams.
Through the book, you do share really personal stories, but you also give advice on how to become a better singer and the work that you have to put into it. You've had so many great opportunities, a major record deal, singing backup for David Bowie. You knew that was coming. Plenty of albums and collaborations. Does the secret lie also in just saying yes to the opportunities that you're presented with?
Yes and no. Is how I'm going to answer the question about saying yes. I think in the early days, saying yes really benefited me, and it benefits a lot of younger people, because you have all of this energy and this blind faith to go out and do whatever it is that you want to do. At some point, though, I think you become more selective about saying yes, whether you just know more, you get a little bit more skeptical or cynical. But in my case, saying yes in the early days, and it doesn't have to do with youth necessarily. I think, let's say you've decided to start something brand new later in life. I really encourage people to just get out there and to really try to say yes to opportunities that seem scary, because it will provide more information for you in terms of deciding what to do next, or what feels right, or what am I willing to do? What do I want to put out there? And when I said yes to singing lessons, that was a game changer for me. When I said yes to singing with David Bowie, which was not in my plan in any way to be a backing vocalist in someone else's band, those things gave me so much education and experience. So all of that adds up to being stronger in your life and in your voice.
And it's one thing to say yes to opportunities, but I think a lot of people kind of freeze up and don't do things because they're afraid. People are really afraid of failing, because I think as a society, it's like, if you fail, you're not worth anything. But you write in the book that failure is actually an opportunity. What's failure an opportunity for?
Well, it's an opportunity to feel all the feelings, right? I think in my case, I'm proud now of this sort of trial and error approach to having a career. So, I had a big record deal when I was 21. That was one of my dreams as a teenager, to have that. And then I lost it very quickly due to a big merger that happened. That was out of my control, but it was still perceived as failure, like, a lot of people in the music industry thought, oh, she's done, I remember an agent I was working at the time just like asking someone, they didn't know I was listening, and they were like, how old is she now? And I was only 25. But at that point, they were thinking, oh, well, she's done, you know. And there have been lots of like highs and lows along the way. So, you know, with finances and then with a marriage going up in smoke. But after every one of those events, there is that opportunity to rebuild. So if you're going to settle into a victim mentality, you're going to stay there. It can be quite comfortable. I've been there, you know, because it's easy to complain and it's easy to say, woe is me. But when you make the decision that that's not good enough for you, that's when opportunity starts to really come your way.
You know, I used to work in the music industry, and it is the worst. I mean, 25, you're a child. Hello. But you mentioned that, you know, when you got voice lessons, it changed your life. And you also say that voice training is like sports training. How?
Well, I was really lucky to work with a vocal coach. His name is Mitch Seekins. He's a big guy. Has been doing it for 30 years. It's his lifelong passion to be a teacher. And I was so lucky that it was his passion because it really infused my life with a sense of there's science behind the voice. Instead of it just being like, oh, I love to sing and it's like I love to dress up, there was a sense of really understanding the mechanics of the voice. And once you know the mechanics, then you can train as though you are an athlete. And the times where it really became apparent to me, this sort of parallel between the sports world and singing was when I was sick. And I would come to my teacher and I would say, I have a show tonight. I don't have a voice. What am I going to do? And he would always say, well, think of yourself as an injured athlete. So, you know, you're going to you could still do the show. You might not have the same power. You might not have the same expression, but it's still going to be okay. Or if it was really bad, you got to rest, right? Mm-hmm. And I think treating the voice with that same professional attitude and the same approach, right? So you're not just a singer on the day that you do your concert or your recording. You got to take care of it. You got to have water. You've got to sleep, you know, have some kind of cardio, you know, I mean, what do you do to get ready for these things?
Well, I know you have small kids. So one of the things you mentioned was sleep. And oh my gosh, I miss sleep so much. But, you know, there's there's probably a handful of people who can say they've had the chance to work with David Bowie. And you in the book write that you anticipate this question whenever you do interviews. What did that opportunity to work with him mean to you at the time?
Well, at the time, I think that it was just another chance to be out in the world because I had just been dropped from this major label. And then it was like, oh, we're going to Paris and we're going to Saturday Night Live and there's David Letterman. And then you'd meet all these rock stars along the way like Annie Lennox and Mick Jagger. So I think at the time I was very much enjoying getting a glimpse of fame without having to be the center of attention. So that was a great gift. I think in hindsight, what I've taken away from it is much deeper. So it's less of like, oh, I got a taste of the big famous life, and more that I saw someone who was very influential, who was just at his core very excited about life, very curious, like fun, you know, and was not really someone who took himself too seriously, which I felt was, you know, for someone who is so influential to not take themselves seriously, you know, I think he cared about his work, but we're in this era of celebrity and everything being so visual and everyone's comparing and numbers and followers. And I know that his philosophy was it was more guided from within. And I think that that's really benefited me in recent years to realize that it's not just about like famous guy. He had highs and lows too, but he was, I think, at his happiest when he was following his inner, you know, teenager kind of thing.
Because you did mention it in the book, and I know it's on the title. It's one of the subtitles on the book, What Touring with David Bowie. But in the book, you did mention that this becomes something that interviewers like myself are really interested in knowing, and maybe in the process of asking that question, the rest of your life and all the great things that you've done is eclipsed. How have you managed to reconcile that?
That's a great question, because it's like sort of the next level of that experience. It's less, a lot of people have asked, what was he like, But I think for a long time, the Bowie experience sort of was a cushion for my disappointment over not, seeing the record label deal through. I hadn't really dealt with it. It was a bit of like someone described it as like musician, like trauma that I was dealing with. And that's not to belittle what other people really go through in their lives. But I think it was a bit of not dealing with my dream not coming true. And what I learned through, touring with David and just nurturing my voice really came to head when I saw myself in this concert that we did called Glastonbury 2000. And I watched it when I was 42. And I saw my 25-year-old self on stage. And I just said, I didn't know where I had gone. I essentially felt like through being a mom and losing sleep, like you're talking about, and just life, I had lost a lot of that vitality. So I think the Bowie thing now is just a joy to accept as part of my story. Mm. And I don't mind when people ask about it now, because I feel more confident about myself. I think when you're maybe wanting that limelight for yourself and you're not being asked about you, that's when it can get a little bit like, this doesn't feel good. But it's all part of it. And I feel like what I've written in the book actually will help people. And that's kind of my passion now, is just to put things out there for people that they can become inspired by, or they can interpret in their own way.
Well, we do have a clip of you performing on stage with David Bowie, and this is from Paris in 1999. Sheldon, could you please roll?
Let me slowly introduce you to my fellow artistes. On the very far end, come here, Em. This is Emm. Now, she can't speak French either, but she said that if I needed anybody to help translate, she would do it through interpretive dance, which I think is delightful. So I am very happy to be here. So every now and again, when I have a particularly difficult passage to translate, Em will do that for me.
I love that clip. It's so because you describe yourself as somebody who was raised by wolves, and you came from a town where it's not on the map for musicians. But when you look back at that, you must think what? Because it's obvious that you two had a relationship.
Yeah, I felt very comfortable around him, and I think, we would talk a lot about bands, and, there are a lot of indie bands that we liked that were the same. We even went out to see some together in New York. We weren't buddy-buddy, though. Like, let me make that clear. I wouldn't say that we're friends, But I think that way that he made me feel comfortable, on stage. I didn't know he was going to do that shtick on stage. So it's just, again, that having a laugh about stuff. And the fact that he'd take, it wasn't just me, he brought the other backing vocalist over after that and spotlighted her. And it was a glimpse, actually, of what he was like behind the scenes. He would always want people to be doing their own art and their own music. And I think he also got really excited when people, felt that they should now step into the spotlight. He felt like a lot of younger bands should kind of not take his place, but get that attention, get that spotlight. And I loved that. I love that sort of, let's pass the baton, let's keep the spirit going. Yeah.
I wanted to read a short excerpt from the book. So in the book, you write, breathing in and breathing out, taking and giving back. It's not about us, it's about them. What is magical about the voice is the breath that lies beneath it. An invisible, omnipresent life force that makes something from seemingly nothing. On breath, we find the words of poets, the songs of survivors, the cries of injustice, or the wishes of a child. In the ultimate show, the body's gift for giving, the breath carries the voice perfectly. Like lovers and best friends carry one another through good, through bad, and through everything in between. But the breath should be a deep one. The voice should be full. The heart should give its all. So beautiful. It's not about us, it's about them. That's something that David Bowie said to you. You write early in the book that I wanted to teach as much as I wanted to be sprayed by a team of skunks right before a hot date. So in other words, you did not want to do it. How has teaching people to sing helped you to rediscover your breath and by extension, your voice?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that teaching taught me was to get past myself, because right in front of you, there's someone who wants to learn. And just like Mitch, my teacher, gave me that gift, I wanted to give people that gift. I didn't know that I wanted to give it to them until I started seeing that, I don't know, like the people I taught lit up. And also that I could teach them, that there was something that I had learned after 25 years that was worth sharing. And it is all rooted in breath. So my students, I don't have a whole lot of vocal students now. It's kind of evolved into life coaching, which is amazing. But it all comes back to learning how to tap into a deeper breath. And this seems so simple, like it's something that is with us all the time, but we don't always know how far we can explore it. And my dad taught me when I was really young, when I was having a hard time going to sleep, about belly breathing. And that kind of breathing does fuel a strong voice, and it also relaxes us, and it also makes, it helps us deal with worry and anxiety. So yeah, it's been a great gift to try to share that with people, and then also remember it in my own life.
You share so much of yourself and your experiences, and the advice that you gave, I think, is going to be very beneficial. Thank you so much for writing it. Congratulations and continued success. Thank you so much, Emm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Some of the biggest names in rap come from right here in the GTA. And Haviah Mighty is an artist that you should look for. Her debut studio album won the Polaris Prize in 2019. And now the songwriter, vocalist, producer, and performer has a new project out. It's a mixtape called Stock Exchange, and it brings Haviah Mighty to our airwaves tonight from Brampton. Hi, Haviah. Nice to meet you.
Hi. How are you? Nice to meet you.
So you have a problem that a lot of artists would love to have. You have two cities claiming you, Toronto and Brampton. Which one is it?
Born in Toronto and living in Brampton, so it's both.
It's both. Okay, great. I have a little bit of a clip to show from your song "Protest," and then we're gonna talk about the mixtape. Sheldon, could you please roll?
Let's do it.
I got the over-the-shoulder look, pat down. I mean that the boy want track down. Whole squad pulled up, so they ran down. Locked doors, so the door get rammed down. When we see them, my art just sank down. It seems that the boy want crack down. Bro, man down. Y'all need to broaden your scope. Picture you got darker skin and broaden your nose. I be sick when I be thinking about the trauma we know. This shit is scripted, watch the drama unfold.
I mean, that is such, the visuals of that video and the song itself, I want to talk about it in a little bit, but I wanted to talk to you about the mixtape Stock Exchange. What is the story behind that?
Yeah, so the project Stock Exchange was initially not a project at all. I was just putting out singles in what I think was kind of the most chaotic time that many of us have experienced, which was the beginning of the pandemic. And in 2020, was it 2020? Yeah, I had a very momentous year. I had a lot of shows planned, and then everything kind of was canceled. So my year in particular just really kind of revamped because of the plans were really contingent on traveling and being able to do that. So these restrictions made that not possible. And I wanted to keep creating. And my idea behind that was like, let me just make songs. Like, I don't know what stories to tell right now. I'm staying at home via these orders. I'm not getting inspiration, but I know I can still make songs. And that was the intention. And I started putting these songs out November of 2020, month to month. So November, December, January. By February, I think that what I realized was a commonality between these releases was not really so much the thematic content of the songs, but the way it was received and the perception of it on the back end after it was released, and how that was impacting me and how I valued myself. Like, that really actually became the common theme. And I started to realize that it was almost like you're as good as your last release, and people value you based on kind of the content that you've put out most recently. And that was something I had to toggle with and understand, okay, numbers, stats, data, analytics, these things that we, that are related to the stock market that kind of tell us what the perceived value of a thing is. Those sorts of things are important to the business, but they do not indicate self-value. And I had to kind of create that distinction. And so a lot of the Stock Exchange project is me kind of toggling with that idea and kind of separating my self-validation from what people might think I should, like what numbers I should be getting, what streams I should be getting, and realizing that it is separate, and that, validating self really, really does come first. And that in itself will allow me to kind of create music that hopefully will achieve those data, stats, analytics, comments, whatever, that a musician would hope to kind of attain. But it was that struggle of not knowing how to validate myself at the beginning of that process.
It's interesting, the word that you use, struggle. What did you learn about yourself during the process of making a mixtape, knowing what you just said?
The biggest things that I learned was, I think, a little bit of a balance. I think just kind of trying to not do music or work all the time. And like with the pandemic, of course, we were forced to be home. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of forced me to sit with myself, internalize thoughts, process thoughts, and not be as avoiding of kind of certain concepts or themes. I was not thinking about certain things that had to do with self, whether it was like my health or habits that I want to have outside of music, because I was just so busy with the music. I was just on the road all the time. And so that pivot helped me to like understand that life is about more than just kind of like that creative output. I can still very much value that and put that at the forefront, but like having that balance will also allow me to tell better stories and allow me to be more intuitive with self. So I think that's really what I learned over the last 2 years.
And why call it a mixtape instead of an album?
That's an interesting question. I think a lot of people, there are distinctions that don't really exist anymore. It could be an album, it could be a mixtape. For me, I called it a mixtape because it was never intended to be an album. And so really, for me, the intention behind it is that distinction for me. It was meant to just be singles. It was not meant to be a project at all. But because it became that, to me, it's a compilation of songs that kind of fit an overall theme, but they were not designed to be an album like, let's say, my previous works of 13th Floor was. And so for me, that is what made that distinction of mixtape.
I want to go back to the song that we played at the beginning, which is Protest. You once said that, quote, "My fear always as a Black woman is to write a song about my experience, but with too much of my opinion." Why did you feel like that?
I think I know what you're referring to. I think it's the fear of people expecting a certain message from me and therefore the message not being as impactful. I think that's what I was trying to convey with that. The fear is, as a Black woman, when I talk about racial issues that have impacted me, for some audiences, it's kind of like, oh, of course you feel that way, sort of thing. And then it takes away from the impact of the song or the important messaging in the song because the messenger is expected, let's say. And so I think I was referring to, I'm not sure where you pulled the quote from, but I think I was referring to 13 because it was a song that I wrote off of the last project talking
about the 13th
Amendment.
Yeah.
But what was really powerful about that song was that I didn't feel like it was really my opinion. Like, I had done some research, I'd come upon some understanding that can be found online. Like, it has nothing to do with opinion. And it's I think one of my most powerful songs, because the impact can't be removed by the messenger. You can't listen to that song and think these are opinions. It's very clearly like something that was researched and thought out and put together. And so, yeah, like, I just worry that, like, sometimes the message might fall on deaf ears because of the expectation of, well, maybe it's not surprising, I guess, maybe that messaging coming from me, especially at this point, me being as vocal as I am.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Sorry to interrupt. I think it's interesting because you would think that because it's coming from you, it actually makes it more valid.
And maybe to some people it does. But I think I've seen enough comments on social media and stuff to know that for some people it's like, she only got this because of XYZ. Like, so there is a little bit of a kind of like a putting in a box. And I think maybe not being able to receive certain messaging from certain people because it's just like, well, I feel like it's coming with a bias, right? Like, other people may feel it's coming with a bias because of my experiences. It's not coming with a bias. It's actually coming from a bit of deeper understanding because of my experience. But I think that can be interpreted differently. But it's not like enough of a fear that I don't talk about those things. It's just I really try to improve my songwriting so that the impact can be felt regardless of who the messenger is.
I grew up listening to rap music, and a lot of people have these ideas and perceptions about what rap music is. For me, it helped me find an identity when I didn't see myself anywhere reflected. You grew up in Ontario in a home full of music, and you even took singing lessons, I think, from the age of 4, but you weren't allowed to listen to rap music. How come?
I wasn't allowed to listen to rap music early on, I think because it was just a house of 4 young women, and it was the 90s, so a lot of the rap music was not necessarily filtering content that I don't think my parents wanted us to see at that time. So I didn't start listening to rap until I kind of had, like, my own decision-making, when I started listening to my cousin's Walkman, and when I started listening to the radio. And
well, what drew you to it?
Access.
What drew you to it?
What drew me to it? I think the storytelling aspect, definitely, and like the realness and rawness of what hip hop represents. I think, like, for my parents, like, they're not like super hip hop fans. Like, they're more, my dad's reggae, my mom's reggae and R&B. So like that was kind of, and there was definitely overlap with what hip hop is, but it wasn't actually like hip hop until I kind of found that I was gravitating towards what I think is really the storytelling aspect of hip hop. It's just different than all styles of music in that you can really kind of get really particular with an experience, a story, whatever, in that genre. And that was something that I really resonated with.
Well, something that really bugs me to this day is that whenever you see the top 5, they're always like, who are the top 5 MCs? And you never see any women. And I'm like, where's Lauren? Where's Yo-Yo?
Right.
Do you feel that, you're one of the few female rappers in this country? Do you feel like things are moving in a more equitable direction in the music?
Based on my experiences and the fact that I've been able to kind of achieve more success, I've been making music for a long time. And while I wasn't necessarily like monetizing it, or I didn't have a management team, or I didn't like understand how to put myself out there, like, I was making music for a while. And so to finally have that music be received, like, I don't know if that's just indicative of my own journey or the overall kind of journey or changes that are happening within music. I do think that there are some changes that are happening. I do think there are more opportunities for people that generally weren't able to occupy certain spaces in music to now be doing that. I definitely think it needs to change more. I think we're still, we have a lot of like music that I think we're kind of presented from bigger entities, but I think people want to have a bit more of a say with what is actually playing on the radio, what is actually like, from the comments and stuff on social media and stuff. People want change. Like, people really do want that. And so sometimes if a market can demand something, then the industry will kind of have to shift in that direction. And I think people want different things. Like, I don't think that they want the same formula over and over again. And so with that, I think we're seeing a little bit of that change, and people like myself occupying space that, 5-10 years ago, it wasn't really going to happen, especially in Canada. Well,
in our final moments here, I know you're working on some things. What are some of the projects that you're working on?
Yeah, well, I have a tour coming up with the Arkells. I'm really excited about that. That's going to be in February. And so I had a little health scare in October, so I kind of took some time off in terms of performing. But I'm excited to kind of get back on the stage, especially especially with those guys. We played a few shows together. And while I'm at home resting and making sure I'm good to go in early 2022, I'm starting an initiative. It's a Black entrepreneurship initiative where I'm looking to be giving back, because I've received a lot of accolades. I've received, funding for my music output, and I want to kind of give back to other Black entrepreneurs that are creating and doing different things in different realms. And for me, I think one of the most validating things was receiving acknowledgement or funding for my output, for my art, and realizing that other people see value in it as well as myself. And so I kind of want to extend that as someone who is in a position now where I can do that. I'm excited to see more individuals doing things that they have only hoped and dreamed of.
Haviah, thank you so much for being on the program. It's exciting to see all the stuff that you're doing, and the mixtape is terrific. Congratulations on everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And that is the agenda for Tuesday, December 21st, 2021, and a wrap for this most peculiar year. Beginning tomorrow, the agenda gives way for some fabulous holiday programming on TVO, from Mozart to Victorian bakers, from Tutankhamun's life to profiles of inspiring Indigenous architects. There's a bounty of great things to watch. And we'll see you back here in this studio, God willing, on January 3rd, 2022, with a feature interview with Peter Mansbridge, the former chief anchor, chief correspondent of CBC's National News, now with his own podcast called simply The Bridge. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and on behalf of all of us here, the very best of the season to all of you, and we'll see you again in 2022.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.